Hi all, thank you for joining us on this hopefully very inspiring and interesting session on Sitecore Search in the world of NextJs and DevOps. I'm Sebastian Winslow, I'm CTO of the Nordics of Balle, a large digital agency. I've been working with Sitecore for, been MVP for plenty of them, and is based in Copenhagen. And I'll just introduce you. So, and I have with me Jesper Balle, who is tech lead and architect, also based out of Copenhagen, also with more than 20 years of experience working with Sitecore in one way or another. Technology MVP this year, and also co-leading the Valtech Sitecore Craft Circle. We have a brief agenda that we want to go through. Starting by just making a super brief intro to Sitecore Search, then talk a little bit about the Search SDK, about Sitecore components with Search. Then there is the DevOps part. Talking about DevOps also means talking about environments, how to handle that in the context of Search. Then a little bit of off-road experiments with PowerShell. Still tied to the DevOps part, and then Q&A and including sponsor slides, which we will already now say very much thank you for sponsoring the event. It's great. Without them, we definitely wouldn't be able to be here. So big applause for them. The super brief intro to Search. You have probably heard it already many times, but it is a standalone product. Could be used together with the rest of the Sitecore portfolio, could be used together with other systems. It's possible to get data into it from many different sources. It's a SaaS solution. There are many configurations that you can make within the CEC, the UI interface for search. UI ... Many of us in here likes other things than UI. It has a very rich feature set and can be used for low-tier customers and all the way up to enterprise customers. We have production solutions running in both ends. It's 2024. It's predictive and it's AI enabled. Now we have said AI. We don't need to say it anymore in this session, but it is. It is now integrated in the Sitecore portal, so it is standalone, but you have access to it in the same way as the rest of the product. So that's the first step of making it a bit closer in the family. So that's nice. And then one thing that you should be aware of when working with Search is that previously with Solar, we have the dynamic fields, right? So everything we do in Sitecore, it's automatically part of our indexes. That's not the case with Search. Here you have to define which fields you actually want to have in the index. Some might think it's great, some might not like it. I like it because you are actively considering what you have in there, and you don't carry around a lot of things that you in principle don't need, right? Because as soon as you would need it, well, then you take the deliberate choice of putting it in there. So that's my opinion. Also, there are a lot of settings to the fields that you configure when you put them in here. So are they sortable? How do they rank and boost and things like this? There are different ways to get content into your search indexes. Usually the simplest approach is the web crawler. You can crawl sitemap pages, so forth. You create some triggers defining which type it is and where it should start from. Then you have some extractors telling exactly how should the content be read, interpreted, and which fields is it that you want to read and how do you want to read them. So that's the website crawler. There is an API crawler, basically the same. You create some triggers. You can also do JavaScript functions to do exactly the same. So it's just different ways of getting the content you want into search. And finally, there's not a slide on that, but there is also the way capability of doing an API push. So you can basically push whatever data you want to into the search indexes. You can see all the content that are in there. That's always nice. You can go to the console and actually see what's in the index. Yeah. And then there is a featured feature. And this is because, and I will hand it over to you now, Jesper. This is because we are now on our third run with search presentations. And every time we take a little feature that we have discovered that we think is nice and have it as a featured feature.
So now we look at those suggestion blocks. There are 3 different types: context-aware, by attribute, by distance. I can tell when we immediately looked at this saying, oh, a suggestion block, it's really cool for those preview search, easily present the right content for our visitors. Let's dig into that when we get to preview search. But there are actually some parts here that are really, really important. For instance, to handle when our visitors cannot spell. The way we handle that is actually by having a suggestion block and have this by distance. So how worse is the word spelled than what we actually have in the index, and use that in the search. And in all search, we can use the suggestion here to get the right spelling and the right results, even though the visitor spells wrong. So it is really, really important to use the suggestion blocks, even though when you're not using preview search. Yeah, there's documentation and the documentation is split between, there's a user documentation and there's a developer documentation, but it's actually really, really important to read the user documentation also. It's not just a matter of navigating around in the UI. It's also how the functionality actually is. Then we'll look at this JavaScript search SDK or UI SDK for React that is published. There are some packages that are not really React specific, but there are a lot of help to generate components that you easily have a UI in a React environment. We use that. So there's a little CLI npm package you can call to generate a component. There are several. See, here's the output from we just started it. You can scroll down and select between a few, and there is a link to, there's a storybook page where you can see how this component is actually looking. And you can choose between TypeScript and JavaScript and different kind of how you approach styling, style components or CSS modules. And there's actually a lot of configuration options on that. And the tool is very helpful. It's asking, or you can put it in on Flex. So it's nice. Then you get a file in your repository. It's a really big file. I'm scrolling down here. But it's a really good starting point. But do take ownership of it. The first solution I generated, all of them, put it into our repository, and then our SonarQube static analysis was really, really mad at me. So you have a lot of duplicate code. So we have split some of it up into reusable part. We have made some changes. There are some texts that you searched on this term. We need to have that translated. We're not just using English for some reason here. Often you. And there are some parts where we have changed the UI, added a bit. Let's see that in a moment. And those suggestions we also add, so we get the fix for typos. So have it as a good starting point, but take ownership of it, make it your own, and not just leave it and think this is what Sitecore think we should do. Yeah, we have. I
can take it. So this is just displaying a different ways of presenting the search component. So this is actually one component that has been generated that is used for different things. So there is one up here where we have just facets for the search. There is one here where we have facets, we have a search field, we have a drop down with already predefined facets. Down here, we don't have the facets or anything, but that's basically just a component to pull out the newest X numbers of a certain content type. We have list view with facets. We have just a normal list view. And then we have the suggestion blocks with, did you mean something else? So we want to show the user you have typed in something wrong, therefore you get 0 results, but perhaps you meant something else. All of this is basically the exact same component, just configured a little bit differently. So in our code base, we only have this one component representing a lot of different UI components, you could say, or UI elements on the website. The cards, so these ones, that is a custom made display of the results. The others, the lists, they are what you can get from the components by default, and of course styled. Yeah. Then we have some query hooks. I'll give it to you again here.
Thank you. So the components are built using this pretty React Native hooks. So there is 2 main query hooks: use search result, use previous search. Feed in a lot of parameters, and you can configure, and it takes care of handling the state of that component. And it also takes care of that even though you have multiple components on the page, there will only be one request to search, even though there are multiple widgets on the page. So it's handled behind the scenes here, and the state is kept. There's also several others hooks to help deeper down, such as this one: use search results, selected facets. Which facets did the user actually select now in this state of the page? So you can have that in another component and still get the data. And here we also, if you can read the code on the screen, there's this add search suggestion that can, and there's now the addition key phrase fallback. So if you set that to true, instead of getting there are 0 results, it will search will just fall back to saying there were no results, but there is one result from this suggestion. We'll use that query instead. So
in Europe, we have had all our fun with GDPR, which we will also touch upon. Now, the next thing we will have fun with is accessibility, right? So we are both doing this for making people find things that they actually want, but it's also a thing that will help people with dyslexia or things like this to better reach the search results. So this is why we kind of push this feature or love this feature, so to say.
Perfect. And then it is just a React component, you can say. In the UIs before, we had a drop down to select between a facet. That was a UI, I don't know if it's our designer that invented it, or it was a request from the client, but at least we ended up with a requirement about that. But we could solve it here using, it's just a single facet. We create another React component with a drop down and have it all integrated into a Sitecore Search. That's just the React development. And sure, you could create the components in another framework than React. We just have the React component. We can have those generated by the client or by the SDK. Yeah. Sitecore components. All requests to Sitecore Search have a reference to a widget defined in Sitecore Search. This customer engagement console is the name of this UI. cc.sitecorecloud.io. So you create a widget in here and reference it on each and every request saying, I'm this widget, now I'm requesting this. And that's because there can be a lot of configuration on that specific widget saying, when we have the news list, then we want to blacklist some items or boost some specific items or similar. And there's even this context where you can have specific rules that only apply in specific scenarios. It could be personalization or for specific keywords or even device and stuff like that. User and content specific context. There is also a lot of analytics in Sitecore Search, and that can even be filtered down on per widget items. We'll maybe see that in later. Yeah, so it's also helpful in that backend by splitting up to the specific widgets. We have created a Sitecore rendering to help the editors insert those search experiences. Several of those fields that we need to configure in the React widget, we have created fields for, such as this RFK ID, that's the widget ID reference. We have a source field that just pages there. And do we want those features enabled or disabled that we have split up this component to create the different UIs? Should there be a search field? Should there be facets or not? Or should there be a dropdown? So the editor can choose that. We haven't seen the newly announced SXA search components. Maybe they can do the same. Maybe our is more feature rich right now. We'll see. And then we have a Sitecore component implementation in our Next.js site. It's actually just wrapping the generated widget, mapping down the fields we have in Sitecore, saying what should the query name field, should the placeholder be there or not? Did the editor specify any fields? But it also takes care of that all of those React component, they only work client-side. Do not try to render any of those server-side. It will give some really strange dispatches, not a function error or something like that. So we have a small check on to ensure that, and something about what do we do in edit mode so the editor can see it and experience it. Yeah. Not that button. No. A slightly different component we have. We had a requirement that the editor want to choose some products or something like that. They want to show on the page, on some pages, it's like a bar grid or something. They could link to those. And those products we have from another system, a PIM system. So on the head, we will make a request to another system to have those data rendered. And in Sitecore, we only have a product ID or something like that. But we use Sitecore Search to crawl the site. So we have all information in Sitecore Search. And hereby we use that information saying, okay, then this component can just make a request to search, saying, give me those items that has the product IDs that the editor has selected in Sitecore. And we have all the data available here. So it's kind of we can call composable glue. It helps us to avoid importing a lot of data into Sitecore, but still give the editor what they actually need. And we have the integration only in one place at the head. Sitecore Search could help us with that. That being said, the requirement from the client, that was probably just about they want to have the right links to the right products on the website. And Sitecore Search can actually do a lot of recommendations. It can build up a context of what is probably that you want to see. And maybe it should actually have been solved with that. But that's also something we need to learn, both our requirements creator on the client and internally, that there are also new ways to handle that kind of scenario.
It could be recommendation based on categories or things like this. In this case, it could be that it should actually be a mix between these two things, right? So other clients who bought this product also bought these products. Perhaps you want to have some of them recommended, and perhaps they want to be able to push out because the top one is perhaps not that which everyone else also bought. It's just the one that they have most of in stock that they want to get rid of. So that could also be the case. So that's a little bit about how both the SDK works and how we have created some Sitecore components, how we have mapped them, how we have enabled the editor to do a lot of the configuration from within Sitecore instead of in the CEC, because they could also do some of it there, but trying to get them to have only one tool to work in. Then there is the DevOps and the environments. We like to have more than one environment, right? We would like to have preferably a couple. When you get a search instance, you get 2 accounts by default. You get a non-production and you get a production, right? So you'll have already 2 accounts that you could use for some of this. But for us, we would like at least 4 different environments, or 4 different environment types, because the first one, development, is actually, of course, a lot of environments when there are multiple developers working on it. So that's the first thing there is with this, with the 2 accounts only. It doesn't solve our problem entirely. We could buy more accounts. That's one option, right? But buying more accounts leaves us with another problem, because there is no synchronization between the different accounts. So whatever we do on one account, we would have to repeat on the next account, right? If we configure 10 widgets, 10 sources in one account, we need to do something similar in the next one. There is currently no easy way to do that. Probably will come. I'm smiling to Nick, he's sitting behind. He's the product owner of Search. So what to do? Well, many actually just use one account, the production account. And that's also fine, right? We can just create sources, 4 different sources. Development. Main issue we get now is that we have the same item, the same content, indexed multiple times, right? So we have that as a drawback. There is a lot of things that can be configured globally for all the different sources. That's fine. We have multiple sources. We can have multiple widgets, right? So we could create a widget that we would use for test. We have one that we would use for production and so forth. Problem with the widgets is, again, how do we make sure that they are actually kept in sync, right? Because again, we have nothing that can keep the widgets in sync. Okay, so multiple sources give multiple content items. They have different configurations. They could have different triggers. They could have different whatever. So we can evolve on some of the environments while having our production set running smoothly.
On each item in the search index, there's a URL. So if we're just using the production content items in our test environment, whenever the time you get a search result, it's a link to production.
Now we have the different sources. We can just in our API requests specify that you please use this source, and then we're kind of identifying this is the environment that we are emulating right now, right? So, and we can put the sources as environment variables so that our code can stay as a single piece of code, just swapping out the different variables. It's up here. Yeah. So this is super good, right? In the search components, we can do the same. We can manipulate the API request. There are a lot of different ways we can do that, but the important one here is, of course, the add source, where we can say this is the source that we want to use. So again, making sure we are in the right environment. I'm happy. I'm super happy. I have no worries now, right? You can have different configurations. You just update the configuration for that upstream that you want to have as a new one. Add a new one, no problem, right? Test it, everything. I'm happy. I'm also a cowboy. Jesper, he's a little bit more structured, and he comes to me and says, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. What about automation? What about the worst piece of the puzzle in the deployment pipelines? The human being. What about all the mistakes they make? I just look at him and say, of course we don't make mistakes. He don't believe me, right? So that's why he went a little bit off-road.
Slightly. So. when we need to update those sources, make sure it's the test environment is actually crawling the test side and the acceptance environment is crawling the acceptance environment and similar. We do that in the engagement console. But looking at the developer tools, we can see it is just an API call. It's actually a pretty nice API call. It's just a beer token and then just pure REST. It's a nice API. This is not documented. There's a lot of ingestion API and search API that's pretty well documented. This is not documented, but it is just an API. So I can call it. And I looked at what is the actual request that's being made. We can read the stuff and, okay, I know it's not supported by Sitecore Search, but it is doable. So I made some PowerShell scripts. Read, for instance, a source, a connector, make a request to the API. There's something that's specific for my environment, like the URL to where should the site be crawled. The name has something about it in an environment, a suffix we used. You saw that website, TST website PRD. We can just remove that, put a file on disk. Then we have saying, this is the source of truth for this source. This is how it actually should be, or how it is. So when we have file on disk representing this, we have some options. We can compare difference between different environments. Here we have been changing something about a GraphQL. Should it be a GraphQL or should it be a JSON request? It's just a formatting, but there were a difference between those two sources. We can compare between different clients. We had a nice one here saying there were no, the results were not really relevant. One of them had the configured ordering saying ascending, the other one descending. It's pretty important. It should be descending, just for you. So, that gives better results. We also have automation tools available. I can now make a request saying, give me all the configuration from production, and almost out of the box with a GitHub action, I can have a pull request getting created saying, oh, someone edited anything in production. Make sure to include that in the source code. And this can run every night. So I can have the real truths in the repository. We have those extractor methods to get the content from the indexed page. We can do a lot of stuff and combine the fields and such. By having this file, real file on disk, even though it's actually an okay UI, there are the editor in Search. But by having a disk, we have all our usual tooling, formatting, all that, what we are used to in our editors. We can create unit tests of those methods. So here we make a request to a page, use the extractor method, call it, and can validate that here we got something from the, we validate the title. To be fair, there has actually been added something in the engagement console, so you can do that directly from the UI. There's now a validate button in the top. Put in a URL, and you can see what you get back from this method. But we still have the value from a pure automated. We can run this every time. We also have a test where we have some mock data and make sure that this function is still working and giving what we expect now. That's nice. What about updating upstream? Do we really dare? It's still just an API call. But okay, be aware that now we are really, is there risks that if the API is changed, we might mess up something with a push request? It might be, okay? Let's be aware, keep an eye on it. But we made the similar PowerShell methods, put back the specific. So instead of this fake VVB site and CM site, put in the real URLs. So we have our single source of truth and map that to the real one and make the put request back to put it back in Sitecore Search. And then we can have a real workflow with this configuration. So we created just a simple GitHub workflow. push to Sitecore Search with the specific values for that environment. We can have a test step, see did the crawl actually succeed, and then when that are good, we can push to the upstream environment. So we put a manual acceptance on each step there. And it takes a while to have several sources recalling, even though the actual crawl is actually okay fast, but there's a queuing before a source get indexed, and I don't know the real logic behind it. Probably something about you cannot have several parallel crawling running on your account at the same time. You can, of course, go try it yourself. It is pushed together in a PowerShell module, so we use that to not have all the scripts in our repository. It is also in a GitHub repository. There's a link on the project side. So you can go and take the scripts there if you want to use that. It is just PowerShell making requests to the engagement console API.
Yeah, I don't know, Jesper. I think that you just added, I don't know, 10, 12 more slides and a lot of code to something that I still think I could just handle manually. Seems a little bit difficult. We actually didn't say it, but that's because we didn't know if these green guys, they would be after us or not. We hoped we would be able to talk a little bit about analytics as well. And if we weren't able to tell about it, then you anyways had a bit of slides stating some of it, because analytics is actually a super cool part of the search product as well. You can do quite a lot of things with it. The granularity is quite good. And I will let Jesper take you through a little bit of that part as well.
Sure. So when you get into the engagement console, the front page of Sitecore Search, you're presented with some search here. So the generated React widgets take care of pushing those events that something has been searched on, and when the user clicks on how many results were there, and the user clicks on the result, and hereby how many of the visitors actually got a result. There's both this overview, analytics on specific on keywords, which keywords were searched for, how many did that, how many results did they get, and which number of the results did they actually click on? Was it the first one, or for some reason we have one where it's the 12th item that's the average popular? I don't know. We had a test on page 100 or something like that. Biggest gainer, biggest decliners, how the search usage is evolving over time. Popular keywords that are declining. And here we have the per widget analytics still with those statistics. It also shows why it's not really a good idea to just have a common filter list like we started with the analytics. It's not that useful. It's better to actually split it up, create a events widget, news widget, and put in the right ID in, for our case in Sitecore, instead of just have a standard value. Maybe also notice that we have something click conversions. We just have 0 there. It is used to this event tracking. So the widgets out of the box of those generated take care of tracking widget view, result item, and on facets. That is tracked when we generate those widgets. If you build your widgets UI yourself, take care of it. You need to do that. There's still some other scenarios that actually make sense to track inside Sitecore Search. User login search cannot know about that. Is there a difference on what logged in users search for and anonymous users? Page view, even though there's not a search result, search experience on a page, it helps build up the context of this user, the user behavior, and it allows search to determine what is actually this user is interested about, and enables those of personalization and context-aware scenarios. So even though there's not a search experience on a page, it makes sense to do something here. There's also this track at event. If we want to get some value of those conversion analytics, we should tell Sitecore Search when is actually a conversion happening. And there are several of those. Is it a download on commerce? It's pretty straightforward. What is conversion? On content pages, we need to have that discussion. What is a conversion? Oh, and there's nice documentation on that also.
If we don't track any of the events, then we probably also don't get the results that we expect from a product or
yeah, we need the data to be able to use them in the product. Then when someone says tracking to me, I always not light up, but maybe the opposite, saying, what about consent? And maybe I don't really want to be tracked. And we actually have some regulation about that here in Europe. There is now a property you can specify on the widget provider, the initialization of Sitecore Search, to indicate if there is consent for tracking, and then none of those tracking events will be sent to Sitecore Search. Of course, it affects your analytics and personalization, just as all the other analytics things we have. You also have to take a standpoint on is this, you probably distinguish between what is on, if the user consent on analytics or on marketing, and what is it actually we have here. Take a standpoint on that. You can actually, on a request level, when requesting search, indicate if you want personalization or not. So there is an option to say, we want to track on analytics level, but not use it for analytics, and hereby maybe we don't need the marketing consent for that, but discuss that with your legal department, right? But the product actually supports that now. Yeah, personalization on a request level.
So I would just say this with the consent part is a place where, and that's not the only feature actually. It has been like that ever since we started to dig into the product. We would like to praise the product team, because we kind of stumble upon things like we weren't able to set this, right? For us, it was important. For the client, it was important. We reach out to the product team. We had an expectation almost that we could stand here and say it's still missing, but it's not. So it's during our work here, we have actually been in contact with the product team. They have implemented the features that were needed and pushed it to production, beating us to making the sarcastic comment here on the session, right? So, and that's kind of how it is. There is really good dialogues with the team. There is a Slack channel for it. Please join it and know that they are there. They listen. They actually engage in the discussions, and they also act on them with really cool solutions. So a praise to the product team for that as well. And it's nice to know that if you go with a product, you're actually able to also be heard in relation to applying requirements. So that's what we had with us. Q&A, I think we are still fine with time. We have planned for it at least. So any questions? Yeah. Yes.
So do you have, like XM Cloud guys have the what's new page so that we can track all your changes and new stuff coming? Because for me, it's very difficult to follow things happening.
Yeah, so first of all, we are on the agency side. So I don't know if it's our you want, but I guess it's the search one you want, right? And the search product has exactly the same. Just go in there. They have RSS feeds you can sign up to. They have the changelog. Everything is there exactly as with XM Cloud. Yes, which is also super cool. Yeah, I would also say with the users documentation. So we said users documentation is both for developers. Please do remember users are also developers here, because there is a lot of configuration. It's almost administration documentation, right? But it's also so good that actually one of the projects we have with a client, he's used to the CMS world, but he's not IT tech, anything like that educated. We basically said to him, okay, before we come and teach you, train you, everything, here's the link to the documentation, just go crazy. And he's able to do that. So that's also pretty cool documentation wise. Yeah.
So in your initial screenshots of your implementation on your client side, you said the various different components, but you said it's the same component, just configured differently. So how do you manage like the widgets against it? And then how does that connect to the CMS configuration that you showed?
Yeah, so the widget generated by the SDK has all of it, say the facet on the left side with you can expand and checkmark and the search bar and pagination. There's now a load more version of it and stuff like that. So we have made changes to that, saying we want to control, should this part of the component be shown, yes or no? Should the search bar be there? Should the facets be there? Should the drop down be there? And added properties to that. Yeah, it's still the same widget from Sitecore Search point of view. It's a request, but on the UI, what we show to the user, we control some of it. Yeah. And in Sitecore Search, for the widget, you configure saying, should some of the search results be different, boosted, buried, blacklist. You can pin specific items saying when someone searches for specific search term, I want this item. Items like that. That happens in the search console.
And this is also where, when we looked at the analytics, Jesper said that perhaps it's not the best idea, even though it's possible, perhaps it's not the best idea because now we have a widget that basically tracks under one what happens in news and events, right? So that one to split out, have a widget for one, have a widget for the other. But it might be that you can have some things where you say, okay, I don't care if they saw it in this configuration or that configuration, we still just track it as one thing. So it's possible to do it, but perhaps not the best idea, right?
But it can still be the same implementation. And just say, now we make a request as another widget ID to have separate analytics, separate search result configuration.
Does Sitecore Search support semantic search or only search on keywords?
Yeah, we have mostly used the key phrase search, but there is a semantic enablement also. We have actually not explored it a lot down that road, but there's definitely capabilities. There's even some Q&A stuff built in. I don't know if anyone put a word. No. But there's a capability around semantic search.
How reliable is your PowerShell integration, and how often or how long did it work?
We have actually not had changes to it, so the APIs on that part have not changed. We were struggling a bit and saying, why is this not really working? The crawlers just keep failing. It actually turned out it's just rigid as a machine, saying, so when we say we have a sitemap index, it has to be a sitemap index, and not because we in SXA have let that generate a sitemap saying we need an index when there's more than 20 items. And when there's less than 20 items, we didn't get a sitemap index. So it also needs to be actually identical when you make configuration identical. But the APIs as such has not been changing while we have been working this for the last months, half a year or something like that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So now we have a 30-minute coffee break.